Welcome to No Compromises, a peek into the mind of two old web devs who have seen some things. This is Joel.
And this is Aaron. I started programming with edit.com, and then after that was a old
That's not a
program in
website.
DOS.
That is like a
No,
DOS
yeah,
executable. Okay.
yeah, there was exe and .com
Mhm.
files.
Yeah.
So I started with edit.com, and then I went to Notepad, not Notepad plus plus, just Notepad.
Yeah.
But now we have some better tools.
Yeah, I suppose we definitely do. Um, I'm getting a little nostalgic for like GW Basic right now, though. But I
Yes.
will I will save that for another day. Um, yeah, like one tool in particular, not an editor per se, but kind of in that same realm. We've been talking about and really enjoying using is PHPStan. And I mean, I like it. My background is not purely PHP. I've done a lot of C sharp. I've dabbled even in strongly typed functional languages. Elm, Aaron, remember Elm?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and so like there is a part of me that really likes the strong typing and some of the guarantees it can give you. And now that's a little newer to PHP world. And it feels a little bolted on in some cases, but PHPStan is a really nice tool to give me some of those things I kind of miss from a language like C sharp. But as with all things, there is a balance to be had. And I know there was a project recently where we were leveling up through PHPStan, and I got to a certain point, and you're like, Joel, what are you doing to this code? Like it was making the code
Mm-hmm.
very unlike we would write it.
Very, very hard to follow based off all the paradigms that we've developed as a team
Yeah.
and that we've even talked about on this podcast.
Right. Right. And so one of the nice things about Laravel is there's really convenient ways of doing things that you do all the time, like accessing data in a named route, for example. And there's Laristan, which helps with a lot of the magic, if you want to call it the magic things that a PHPStan alone wouldn't detect. But that's even still, there are things that PHPStan at higher levels, I would say starting at level 5 and going up from there, that just don't gel with like the way we like to write Laravel code. And so kind of the debate we were having, I thought might be a fun topic for today is like, don't go too far, right? Like, is there a point where we just decide this level is enough, or we don't care about that rule because it would the tool would essentially be dictating to us how to write the code, and maybe the benefits it gives if we follow that don't outweigh the negatives of like just changing how we write code and keeping code the way that we think it's most maintainable.
Yeah, I think there's a point to be had there too, where it depends on how long that you've worked in Laravel,
Yeah.
in PHP and things like that, whether you've learned the best practices
Mm-hmm.
through mistakes. And so I think that's something that we can say we have done is learn through mistakes,
Yeah.
done a lot of things wrong. And so that's how we've kind of developed our own way of doing stuff, quote, our right way, which is not the only right way.
Yeah.
But you have that. And then I like to look at those tools like PHPStan, Laristan as an add-on. So it adds
Right.
on to what I already know. It helps me catch when I, don't do the perfect thing that I meant to do, or if I've made an actual bug. I think it's different though if you consider different audiences. So if you just started maybe programming in PHP or in Laravel and you're
Mm-hmm.
not really familiar with all the ways that you might do something, I see a lot of people doing that. Like they mix up all the different ways to maybe get the current user out of the session.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it's the auth facade, sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
the auth, global function, sometimes it's from the request, and they're all just kind of mixed up, and it's hard to keep track of what's
Yeah.
going on. Those cases when you do something like that, PHPStan, Laristan will start saying, I don't know who this is, or this could be a nullable object. And when
Mm-hmm.
you start to see that, it's kind of hinting to you that uh, the tool's lost track of where you're at. And
Right.
so probably another developer could
Yeah.
too, or
Yeah.
or at least it's going to require a lot more thinking on their part than maybe getting it once and using it throughout the process.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point because skill level and experience level I think apply. And let's be honest, if you've ever used PHP Stan, some of the errors are a little like computer sciencey, like this type is contravariant with
Mhm.
that type. I'm like, what just happened? And I mean,
Yeah.
the docs are nice, and there's articles. In fact, I like how a lot of the errors now you can actually link to an article on
Hmm.
PHPStan that tells you like what's actually happening. But yeah, that could really throw somebody off if they're like, you know what, you're new to PHP, you're new to Laravel, we're going to start you out at PHPStan level 9, and let's just see how you do. Like that would not be a fun time, that for sure.
Right.
Um, and again, I just want to make sure it's clear. I love PHPStan. Like it has actually
Me
caught
too.
bugs. When I was leveling up
Mhm.
in this particular project we're thinking about, it found a couple legitimate bugs in the code. And I'm like, wow, that was.
That Joe wrote and not
Um,
me.
I want to go look now, but I don't remember it, so I can't
Yeah,
I
no,
can't defend myself. But
you caught one of mine. That's why I threw that out there. I was like,
oh,
yeah, you were fixing it. You're like, well, PHP stand found or Lara stand found this, and I was like, but I was just complaining yesterday about Joe messing stuff up with this, and now I have to be eat a little humble pie here.
yeah. So I guess maybe the point I'm trying to make through all of this is tool good, benefits good, but don't go too far with it. And so maybe one or two tangible examples would help to demonstrate this point. So in we like form requests, we like validation, and a lot of times a form request you might need to get something out of the route, like the user or
Hmm.
that's this was an API where the user ID was part of the URL, and so you,
But the
you get a
client,
sure,
or the
yeah,
author, you're editing something of theirs.
yeah, order ID, whatever, right? And so this arrow route user or order or client, super handy, right? And in some of these rules, we only use it one place, so it would just be kind of inlined into the rule definition. And PHPStan doesn't like that because this route, I think, returns like string or null or object or null. I can't remember, but it's definitely not returning a user model or a client
Well,
model.
it should be clarified. It returns whatever
Right, right.
the doc of at return the PHP doc
Yeah.
says string or null or whatever.
Right, right. And that's stuff that's in Laravel framework. And so it is what it is. But so I think the first thing I did, and maybe this was what even triggered this conversation, is it's like, all right, I extracted it out of the rule definition and I captured it in a variable. And then you can add to make PHPStan happy. I could add a var doc block right above it saying, nope, this is definitely a user. Like we knew it was because we had middleware in place. Like you couldn't get to this point if it didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, Joel, why are you doing that? Like, why are you making the code worse? Less, more verbose, less readable, just kind of more robotic. I don't know if that's a good way of describing it. Oh, because PHPStan didn't like it. And so we had a whole debate about that. What we ended up doing, which I think was a pretty nice compromise, is we wrote our own route helper, which was just a thin wrapper around what maybe the 5 or 6 different named routes that we needed access to that just returned the right type. And so we could still inline it. It was still extremely readable. In fact, it maybe was even a little more readable. And I thought it was a good compromise.
Well, and just to make it clear, it was because a single at var
Mm-hmm.
PHP doc. I love doing that too. I do that all the time. But this one was like nested in a folder that was in a certain
Yeah.
context,
Right.
and we knew that we'd always get the user, and so
Yeah.
why should you have to do that doc each time? If you
Yeah.
know that like every single form request you're going to use the user as well
Mm-hmm.
as maybe other stuff, then you can put that helper on there. And when that one just has a return type of user, then you don't have to do those vars. But
Yeah.
we don't want to go too complicated and make a helper for every single time we use
No.
something once. You
No,
know,
that's right. Yeah. Please. Like that's a good clarification. In fact, Aaron likes the VAR doc block so much. I think you have a tattoo of that, don't you? Or no, maybe that would be a very nerdy tattoo. All right. One other example I'll throw out there because I think this also demonstrates something too, where there's an alternative to changing your code for the tool, and that is like just knowing how the tool works and what
hmm.
what levers it gives you to adapt it to your code base. So, for example, in Laravel, like I think this one we were using sort of the built-in auth stuff you get. Is it Breeze? I can't remember what the current name for it, but where it just scaffolds some routes for you. So that scaffolded auth, uses things like the authenticatable interface or the
Hmm.
verifies email trait. And those things are users, like they are the user model, but they're not type hinted that way. And so PHPStan, like we would be using in the password reset flow, this user or however it comes back in.
Hmm.
And it's like, no, that's not a user. You can't call a method on that. And so in this case, we could have used a var doc block. That's fine. We do that again. We like that. But I tried a different approach here, knowing how PHPStan works. And you can actually create your own stubs. And so a stub is basically just like a dummy file that has a PHP class definition in it or a trait definition. And then you can add your own type hints to it. And it sort of layers it on top of the type hints in, for example, the Laravel framework authenticatable trait. And that's actually how Laristan works. It's a big, series of stubs. And so
Hmm.
in this case, we just wrote like two pretty simple stubs. I think, each one was like 10 lines of code. And that solved the problem that way too. So that's another thing is like maybe you don't have to change your code. Maybe you just have to know how the tool works and you can extend it or tweak it slightly to give you the result you want.
Right, right.
And we like three. So I'm going to give you one more example, Aaron.
I think a good third one to round this out would be the whole sort of back and forth we saw in the framework of the controller types. Well, not in the framework, but in the project,
Yep.
where the newest version of the project skeleton had the return types added specifically to the controllers that were in
Mm-hmm.
there, and there was some discussion about like removing them, and then now they're gone again. And I remember that I was a pretty big fan of having them everywhere. I said,
Yeah.
let's have return
Consistency.
types everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't understand why everyone's complaining, but okay. And so then I started doing it to some of our projects. And I definitely remember this too. There was like something I wrote that had a return type that something happened that it was the wrong return type. I think it was like a
Mm-hmm.
JSON request and whatnot. And
Yeah. Yeah.
one of those things. So I just didn't have all the return types on that. And you weren't doing any of the return types either. And you just said, why would we do that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll explain my thinking there because here again, Laravel is so flexible. There's like, I don't know, 7, 8 different types of objects you can return from
Or
a
just
controller
strings or
action.
null.
Yeah, string, a PHP array, whatever. And that's really nice. And so once you type hint it to something, you're limited. Now you can always change it, or you can do like a giant union type. It could be one of these 6 things, which I think is also not really nice to look at.
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, it was almost like writing a unit test for function within the Laravel framework, right? So it was like we're adding types to a method that the only thing that's going to call this method is the framework. Like when the
Right.
framework is resolving the route and it's instantiating the controller and it's executing the action, like it's the only thing that's calling that. We're
Mm-hmm.
not calling those methods ourselves. If it was and like to jump on that, if it was a protected method in the controller that was maybe shared by 2 different actions, like we would put a return type on that,
Yeah.
like a check that returns a bool or an array of data or something. But the actual controller actions, like Laravel doesn't need that type. It knows how to handle it. It's certainly not a bug it's catching. It really was just noise at that point. And so we made the decision anything the controller or the framework itself is using, don't add a return type. So I think like controller actions for sure. Middleware, was that another one? I don't remember exactly where
Yeah,
we
I
landed
think
on it.
so. I mean, there isn't such Joel likes rules.
I love
There
rules.
isn't such a standard, like, because for
Yeah,
example, the rules method of the form request, we
true.
return arrays on there.
Array.
So
Yeah, yeah,
but it was just like, what does this actually give us, and what does it confirm, and
yeah,
is it the only way of doing something? And
yeah.
to be honest, I still didn't agree for a long time, and then all of a sudden, like, it made sense to me. Like, okay, I get it. And then it was just hard to be like, well, I was wrong. I don't want to admit
This might be
this.
the first time I'm hearing this, Aaron. So go on about that. I like
I didn't what?
I talked about my kids before and some of the interesting things they say. It's some of them kind of make me think like, where did that come from, or what even made them think of that? The other day, um, my son has this thing he does where he kind of comes up with weird opposites of things. And so I'm going to give you one example.
Okay.
And he's like, Dad, does the existence of silly putty imply that somewhere there's serious putty? And so it just for context, like this was in a car ride, just randomly he drops this question on me. I'm like, what are you talking about? But then his brother says, yeah, it's called C4.
Some of the projects I'm working on, I get a little stuck. I don't know kind of what to do. So I reach out to Joel and I say, hey, can you help me?
And if you don't have a Joel, we can help you. Go to masteringlaravel.io. Need help? Get unstuck. It's a service we offer, and we'd love to help you get unstuck.